And welcome back, FM Talk 1065. You're listening to Mobile Mornings, and my favorite time every month, Brian Comer and Tobias Comer Law in studio for another edition of Law 251. And we have a lot to talk about like we do every month. Good morning, Brian.
Good morning, Dalton.
So good to see you again. And we talk about this, I guess, category. We've discussed this thing before in the podcast, but we usually talk around Christmas time, after Christmas, areas of the year, times in the year when people are getting new things and product recalls. And then, of course, on the morning show throughout the year, every now and then there's a big recall and people need to know about it. Well, I want to dive into that a little bit further because I'm not sure that everyone is aware how sometimes incredibly dangerous products are or can be, and how long they're actually out there on the market before the market gets a hold of it and it ends up being fixed for the better. And we'll talk about your role in many of those, making products safer. But you've worked plenty of product recall cases over the years.
Yeah, sure. And they fall into something in Alabama law called the Extended Manufacturer Liability Doctrine. And that's a mouthful, so we always refer to it as AEMLD for short. But what it says is that the manufacturer of a product or the distributor of a product that puts into the stream of commerce a product that's defective, and because of that defect, the product hurts someone, then that company's responsible for it. And that could be the manufacturer, that could be the seller, the distributor, depending on where it is in the chain. And if you've got a situation where, say, I don't know, a big box store or something just gets the box off the truck, puts it on the shelf, there's no responsibility on them because they don't do anything to it. But we're talking about the people who design the products, the people in the companies that sell something that they know is a problem. And so when we get to the recall phase that you're talking about here, there's an agency called the Consumer Product Safety Commission. We've talked about this before, but their job is to see, is a product defective? And if it is, to put out notice to the consumer and ultimately to work with the manufacturers on issuing a recall to get unsafe products off the shelf.
So kind of explain that timeline just a little further. So the CPSC, which you've told me about it, and it really is a good resource. They have the information all there, especially if you're looking at a particular item that you may have heard had been recalled, one that you own or had gifted someone. It's pretty responsive, and it tells you what you need to know. But how do they find out? Do they find out from the provider of the product, the person who created and sells that product, or do they find out from the consumer?
Either. So a consumer can go on their website and fill out a complaint form if a product is defective. If the car seat doesn't latch properly, or the crib. We always think of it in terms of particularly with infant things. We both have small kids, and you know how you get all that literature and stuff. But that's all because of someone reporting it. But also the manufacturer has a responsibility to report a dangerous condition. So if they have data that comes in from the field, we've had X number of serious injuries, X number of fatalities, X number of failures that get reported, then they have an obligation under federal law to actually then notify the CPSC.
And they also, I guess, the provider of the product, the manufacturer, has to tell the consumers too, or is that just the CPS? I mean, you would think they would have to tell the consumers, right? If it's their product.
So there's a process, okay? And so if it fits into certain categories, it's something that it's a defect that's going to hurt or potentially kill somebody. Absolutely. Notice has to go out. You got to issue the recall, and then that's a multifaceted thing where you have to say, okay, well, what does that look like? What are the mechanics behind that? How does an auto manufacturer go back and recall this? Well, you got to figure out who it goes to. You got to send out the notices, ultimately get them back. Or is it product that's still on the shelf that we then need to pull off the shelf? And so it's a really multifaceted thing, but it goes through the process with the CPSC working with the manufacturer to say, okay, what is it that needs to happen? Is this something that we just need to warn people about? Or is this something that we need to take the ultimate step and get it recalled?
Yeah, it's a really interesting process. And I want to talk about how Tobias Comer Law, when you work products, when you work cases like this, and you've told me about some in the past, where people around here, people we know, have been sometimes gravely injured, sometimes killed by products that were eventually recalled. And in many cases, that might be the first time that a manufacturer or certainly the CPSC had heard about.
Sure, and that happens. For a variety of reasons. Is it a product that's made overseas that is outsourced by an American company? Is it something that for whatever reason there's not reporting that goes up to the manufacturer? But sometimes, a lawsuit can be the way that the manufacturer finds out about it, or at least what they say is the way that they find out about it. And that's something that we talk about all the time, how we're here in the community, and that's something that we take very seriously, our role in the community to help make it safer. And if we can, I've seen it after the fact, after a case has been over where a product gets recalled, a product gets changed, just to know that it wouldn't happen to somebody else is a pretty powerful thing.
Yeah, and maybe a relatively small solace taken by someone who's been injured by something like that, but still a rare benefit, I guess, to be having to be involved in that. I guess if you want to say something like that you're keeping other people from potentially suffering the same or worse injuries.
I want to actually say yes, but I want to say something on that. We represent some really good people, and we're very blessed to have some amazing clients. And I would say that the overwhelming majority of them, almost 100% of them, when they come into us with a defective product case, they want to make sure this doesn't happen to somebody else. And that is the driving factor for them. I mean, yes, there's the things that they need, whether it be to make their home wheelchair accessible, or to have the things there like a van, that's handicap accessible where they can get around, things like that. But it is that I want to make sure this doesn't happen to another person.
Wow, that's pretty powerful. And I'd say good people find good people, because at Tobias Comer Law, you guys are all about that,
right,
and helping out our local community, of course, but people in this nation and across the world, which is crazy that sometimes a story like this can reverberate. I mean, we're talking worldwide. You and I have been talking about products here that are, everywhere.
Right.
And this could be changing. Just someone walking into your office and say, hey, no one knows how dangerous this is,
sure,
except me, and I know because I've been injured in some
sure,
form or fashion. It's wild to think of something like that. We also talk about registering, and when you do have a product and getting on that recall list. Is that like I'm going to give myself away here. I'm going to Disney here soon. Is that like the fast pass to finding out about a recall, is to go ahead and sign up and get on their recall list?
Yeah, I mean, and that's the way that you get any kind of updates from the manufacturer. There's some products we buy that are, large volume products. So we've talked about car seats before. Lord knows how many car seats some of these manufacturers make. And so if you go to Walmart or to any of the other places and buy the car seat, how do they know that it's you that bought it? Others are very specific, like with a car, where it's automatically registered and all that sort of thing. But if you want to make sure that you stay up to date on these products, and particularly on recalls for dangerous conditions, registering is hands down the way to do it. And dating myself here, I remember back when it was the old card that you would have to fill out and go drop it in the mail and all that. Now, 99% of them you can do online, and then that's the way that you can stay up to date with it.
Wow, it's easy enough. Let's talk about a product recall, and this is the Trek e-bikes. I was reading a little bit about this earlier. That's one of those. You go to the CPSC website, and you'll see that recall right now.
Yeah, and this is one we actually are involved with a case right now involving a dangerous condition on an e-bike where a fender detached, and just very recently, the CPSC, like in the past few weeks, the CPSC issued a recall notice for this exact bike for this exact issue that we're in litigation about currently.
Wow. And so that notice went out on the CPSC, and people are finding out that maybe the bike they have or that's on the shelf needs to go back to the manufacturer.
Yeah, or there's a fix that's in place for it. This particular one needs to have a thread locker put on, like Loctite, put on the screws to prevent it from failing. But yes.
I think, and just to kind of extend this for a second, the baby stuff, sure. The toddler stuff, you see that a lot, but also vehicles. And that can be really wide ranging, right? Like I've taken my vehicle in just to fix the windshield wipers, which that could be very dangerous, but something seems so minor. If someone passes up is there a window generally? Like if there's a recall out there, you think, oh, it's not that big a deal. Is there a window where you miss it? Or if something happens to you and you didn't take that thing in to get it recalled, are you potentially missing out on, I don't know, taking that to court or something like that?
You raise a couple of good questions. A lot of it has to do, let's take the first part. When you receive the notice, what kind of timeline do you have? Typically, the recall stays out there. Okay, so like if Pick'em auto manufacturer, Ford or whomever goes out and says, well, here's a good example, the Takata airbag.
Yes.
Yeah. When you talk about degrees of danger, when you're talking about your windshield wiper versus the airbag exploding in your face.
Big difference.
Yeah, and that's a situation where I believe even now you could still go get your airbag replaced if you never did.
Okay.
And so typically they stay open. The manufacturer might not be advertising it anymore, but as far as I understand, there isn't really a time limit. You just, when you get the notice, you want to act on it. In terms of not acting on a recall and then something happening, there's really a case-by-case kind of basis.
Okay.
I mean, there are the laws are different everywhere. I mean, we cover. I mean, here we can throw a stone, and we could be in Pensacola or Mississippi, and the law is different from state to state. And so the main thing is what we really want to get out the word for is to register and to make sure that you do adhere to any kind of recalls that happen, so that we can prevent the accident.
Of course,
we can prevent the catastrophic injury from happening. And make sure that people don't need us.
Yeah, well, my headphones are a little tighter this morning because my brain grew once again with Brian Comer in from Tobias Comer Law, learning every time y'all come in. And there's an easy way for folks to hop online and learn more about you and many of these topics we discuss, and that's TobiasComerLaw.com.
That's right.
And you can find all of the information there that's loaded up. Jennifer does such a great job of that. Your entire team, fantastic to be around and talk to. And also, folks can, of course, call for a free consultation, 251-432-5001. That's 24/7, and that was memorized. I had that right there. Thanks for coming in this morning, Brian.
Thanks for having me, Dalton.
That's Brian Comer with Tobias Comer Law and another edition of Law 251. Coming up next, the Jeff Poor Show right here on FM Talk 1065.